Today I'm going to tell you a story so raw it leaves a mark set against a West that chews men up and spits out what's left. A land of frozen roads and hard choices where survival and mercy collide head-on. It's a place where one knock on a door can bind two broken lives together or end them both. It began with something small, a sound in the night, quiet enough to ignore, but powerful enough to change everything. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. I carry 3 regrets, the way some men carry scars, quiet, permanent, impossible to set down. The first was the cavalry. I rode with them against the Lakota in 76 and 77. Did what soldiers do when commands come faster than conscience. I haven't slept clean since. The second regret was believing I could outrun those memories by carving out a claim on 160 acres of frozen Wyoming ground. Turns out silence and whiskey don't mend what war cracks open inside a man. The third regret came later. And it came wearing a woman's face. She found me on a February night in 1889, half dead on my porch. And what still haunts me isn't that I opened the door. It's how close I came to leaving it shut. On the other side stood a choice. A woman with lips blue as winter glass eyes burned hollow with need, and a fate that would knot itself to mine in ways I couldn't yet see. A choice that would strip away 6 years of hard work and hand back something I didn't know I'd lost. Most men would have turned her off. Truth is, most would have been wiser. But I met her eyes. They weren't pretty, just desperate. And I recognized them. I'd been seeing that same look staring back at me every morning since I rode out of the cavalry. So I pulled the door wider. Out here, choices don't ask politely, they strike hard. Then they settle in your bones and refuse to leave. I was 38 years old then. 6 years into homesteading, 18 miles from Rock Springs. A former cavalryman who'd fought the Lakota in 76 and 77. I'd seen things that still clawed me awake when the moon ran high. My cabin was 14 by 16 pine boards soaked with sweat, old whiskey, and the stale bite of cheap tobacco. I was near broke after the winter die-up that wiped out most Wyoming herds. All I owned of value was a Winchester occult peacemaker, and the ghosts I kept quiet with drink. And I was drunk. Third whiskey of the night, my usual, not enough to drop me. Hell, I could still skin a rabbit. Just enough to soften the edges, make the world feel less sharp. I'd been thinking of selling the place, not just for the money, though God knows that mattered, but because the silence was killing me. 3 years had passed since I'd paid a woman in Fort Laramie. She'd stared at the ceiling like it owed her something. Then came 3 knocks at the door. I took up the Winchester and opened it. She collapsed into me dead weight, her breath rattling like loose nails in a tin can. She wasn't pretty then. Lord, no. Her face was the color of old snow lips, bruised purple ice tangled in her hair. She looked like death, trying to remember how to breathe. And my first thought, God forgive me, wasn't mercy. It was this: if she dies here, the sheriff's going to start asking questions. Still, I dragged her inside, barred the door against the wind, got her close to the stove, and then came the part that twisted my gut. Her clothes were frozen to her skin. I had to cut them away. And I won't lie about what followed because it happened. When I peeled the wet dress free and saw her beneath it, pale and shaking, my body betrayed me. 3 years without a woman, and there I was trying to save her life, while my blood reminded me I was still breathing. I turned my back. Felt sick with myself. Her name, I would learn later, was Mabel Fitch. And that night was the moment everything began to break open. I didn't have the luxury of decency. My body reacted on its own, cruel and honest, while my hands stayed busy doing what had to be done. I pressed her against my bare chest, shared what warmth I had tipped. Whiskey thinned with hot water past her lips, wrapped her feet tight in sheepskin. She never truly woke, just trembled and whimpered softly like an animal too hurt to fight it. That was when she spoke, barely louder than breath. 3 words that bent the night out of shape. Orson Pike. Left me. I knew the name the instant it landed. Everyone in Wyoming territory knew Orson Pike. A heavy figure in the Stock Growers Association, a rancher with money deep enough to buy judges and politicians outright. The kind of man who could erase a nobody homesteader without ever getting his boots dirty. And this woman, if she belonged to him once, that made her trouble. Which meant she'd just become mine. I slept on the floor that night, Winchester laid across my chest. I didn't trust her. Didn't trust the mess she carried with her. Still, I kept the fire alive, kept her breathing. Even now, some nights I find myself staring at that door, wondering. But wondering doesn't thaw frostbitten fingers. She woke the next morning while I was frying salt pork. No scream, no tears. She simply sat up in my bed, swallowed by my spare shirt, and looked at me with eyes the color of cold steel. "You got a name?" I asked. "Mabel Fitch." She said it steady. No shame riding her voice. "And before you ask, I'm not running from the law." Then I poured her coffee. A man who thought he could toss me aside like spoiled meat. "You mean Pike?" I asked. "You know him, I know of him. A rich bastard with land to burn and pride to match." I took a seat across from her. "What did you do to make him dump you in a blizzard?" She laughed, short and sharp, like a branch snapping under snow. I got old. 29. Apparently that's a crime. Over the next 3 days, while the storm howled itself hoarse outside, Mabel told me everything. She was from Pittsburgh, lost both parents. Her father died working the steel mills. Her mother followed, taken by consumption. She'd taught school until Arthur Blaine, the headmaster, decided her body belonged to him. She fought back, lost her job, lost her name. No one would hire a woman with a story like that. So she answered an advertisement. Orson Pike's letters promised a solid house and a decent life. They wrote for 6 months. She clung to every word because she had nothing else. When she stepped off the train in Rock Springs, Pike looked her over and said, "You're older than I expected. And plainer." Turns out he was already promised to another rancher's daughter a land deal wrapped in lace. Rosalie Kemp didn't know Mabel existed. Pike needed her gone before his future bride found out. So he drove her 18 miles north, handed her $15 and said, "Find your way back or don't. Makes no difference to me." Then he left her there on the north road in a whiteout. When she finished, the cabin went quiet. The stove popped, grease hissed. Finally I said, "Fool thing to do." She blinked. "That's it. Out here I said you don't throw away meat, horseflesh, or a woman." She didn't know what to make of that. "You can stay till the weather breaks," I told her. "After that, you choose your road." I told her I wasn't her rescuer. Just a man with a roof and a fire. What I didn't say was what that roof held. 4 walls, 1 narrow bed, and floorboards that groaned loud enough to betray every breath. Each time she shifted, each time she bent to feed the stove, or reached up to hang her dress, I caught sight of her beneath my shirt, the sweep of her hip, the faint hollow between her breasts, when the collar slipped loose. On the 3rd night after she'd finally fallen asleep, I stepped outside into the cold. Stood there in the snow and dark, and handled myself like a boy who didn't know better. Low and pitiful. It needed doing. When I came back in, Mabel Fitch was awake. She said nothing. She didn't have to. She knew. And I knew she knew. The next morning she said, "You haven't asked me to leave." "The storm's not over," I told her. "Yes, it is. It broke yesterday morning." She crossed the cabin and stopped right in front of me, close enough that I could smell her soapwood smoke and something deeper that was only her. "I'm not a good man," I said. "I drink too much. I wake up fighting ghosts. I can barely read, and you're educated. You're better than this, I finished. Better than what she said. Freezing to death, being alone forever. She touched my face. I don't need good. I need real. And you're the first real thing I've had in 2 years. You don't owe me anything. I know, I said. Her thumb traced my jaw. That's why I'm choosing this. What followed wasn't gentle. And it sure as hell wasn't poetry. We crashed into each other like drowning people clawing for air. I pressed her back against the wall, tasted her mouth. Felt her hands tearing at my clothes with the same hunger driving mine. I lifted her onto the table. She locked her legs around me when I pushed inside, gasping into my neck. There was no romance in it, just 2 hollow souls burning for warmth. She was tight nails digging into my shoulders, breath hot in my ear, whispering, "Yes, don't stop, please," in a voice I hadn't heard before. I took her fast and hard because I couldn't stop myself, 3 years of want spilling out all at once. When it was over and shame crept in, she pulled my face down and said, again, slower. So I carried her to the bed. I learned her body the way a man learns hostile ground, careful, alert, reading every response. Learned what made her shiver, what made her arch, the sounds she couldn't hold back. Learned she wasn't timid, wasn't quiet, and sure as hell wasn't breakable. Later, lying in the dark, with her head on my chest, she said, "That was honest." "Yeah," I said. More honest than anything we could have said out loud. I remember thinking this is where it turns messy. I wasn't wrong. 3 days later, Sheriff Wade Lorick knocked on my door. "Got ourselves a situation here, son." Mabel Fitch was inside pouring coffee. The moment she heard his voice, she froze. "Orson Pikes filed a complaint," Lorick said. "Claims breach of contract. Says Miss Fitch signed papers agreeing to marry him. Says he paid her train fare and expenses. Claims she owes 6 months' service as a housekeeper, or repayment with damages." My jaw locked tight. He left her to die in a blizzard. "I know it." "Maybe so," Lorick said. "But law's the law, even when it stinks." He glanced past me into the cabin. Technically, she did sign. How much I asked. $47 for the passage, $30 more in damages, $77, every cent I'd scraped together through the winter. The thin line between keeping my land and losing it. "No," Mabel said, stepping forward. "I won't let you." "Don't," I snapped, not looking at her. "This isn't charity. I'm hiring you." She stared, hiring me for what I turned to face her, as my wife. The silence that followed was louder than the blizzard had ever been. "I need a woman here," I went on, "for warmth, for cooking, for company. You need a roof. You need a name." "It's a business arrangement," I said, then stopped heat creeping up my neck. We already crossed that line anyway. Her eyes shone. "And if you want more than business?" "Then we figure it out," I said. "Same way we do everything else out here." Sheriff Lorick scratched his beard. "You sure about this? Dead sure." "Then you'd better move," he said. "Pike's riding this way right now with 4 men. I paid him on the spot, counted out every silver dollar I had while Mabel watched." Lorick pocketed the money, tipped his hat. "I'll tell him she's spoken for," he said, "but that won't stop him." He was right. 10 minutes later, Orson Pike rode up. Pike wasn't the kind to twirl a mustache. He was the sort who watched you bleed and counted the cost. Men like him didn't need to pull a trigger, they just ruined you slow enough you did it yourself. He dismounted with the Pike outfit at his back, all armed, and looked at my cabin like it was filth. "Looks like you found my property, homesteader." "I don't see property," I said. "I see my fiancé." Pike smiled thinly. She signed papers. Witnessed. Marriage in exchange for passage west. "That's binding. You dumped her in a blizzard," I said. "That kills any contract. Sheriff Lorick already ruled." "Oh, Lorick ruled," Pike said. That's interesting. I happen to know the territorial judge, and I reckon he might see it different. That was the moment. The moment a sensible man would have backed down. But I'd spent 6 years keeping my head low. And I was done with it. I stepped closer to Orson Pike, close enough to catch the scent of pomade in his hair, the bite of expensive tobacco on his breath. I spoke soft. You step onto my land again, I'll put you down. It won't be murder, I went on. It'll be defense of property. Sheriff's standing right here. He's already heard you threaten me. My land, my rifle, that's all the law needs. Now get off. Pike's face flushed red. For a heartbeat, I thought he might reach for iron. But he was smarter than that. He laughed instead. You just ruined yourself for a woman who'll walk away, he said. Soon as she sees what you really are, a broke drunk squatting on frozen dirt. Wait till winter comes back. Wait till she remembers what a real house looks like. Then he swung into the saddle and rode off. Mabel Fitch stood in the doorway, watching them fade down the trail. When they were gone, she said, He's not wrong. About winter. About how hard it'll be. I know. Then why did you do it? I looked at her there in my shirt hair loose on her shoulders, bare feet on my floor. Because I'm tired of being alone, I said. And because you're the first soul in 6 years who looked at me like I mattered. 2 weeks later, we were married. Preacher Dunn came through and did the job in 10 minutes, right there in my cabin. No ring, I couldn't afford one. Mabel wore the same dress she'd arrived in, washed clean. That night I took my wife to bed. Not like before. Not hungry or rushed. This time I was slow, careful, listening to every breath, every shift of her body. I kissed every inch of skin I could reach, learned where she laughed, where she shivered. When I finally joined her, she wrapped her arms around my neck and whispered, I'm yours now. All of me. And I'm yours, I said back. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Out here, life doesn't wrap things up neat. Spring came hard that year. Mabel learned the work, milking cows, tending chickens, scrubbing clothes in water so cold it split her hands. Her back screamed. Her palms cracked. She never complained once. At night, we collapsed into bed, finding comfort where we could. Sometimes it was bodies. Sometimes it was just holding on in the dark. But the world outside our cabin was meaner. In April, I took her into Rock Springs for the first time. The women saw her and knew she'd been mail order, knew about Pike. The Rock Springs wives whispered behind their hands. The storekeeper helped everyone else, first made her wait. They made her wait while he helped everyone else first. I didn't say a word inside the store, but once we stepped back out, I drove my fist into the wall beside the doorwood, splintering under my knuckles. Mabel Fitch caught my arm. Don't, she said. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. That night she tried to leave. I found her stuffing her few things into a bag, tears streaking down her face, the first time I'd seen her cry since that night in the blizzard. I'm dragging you down, she said. They don't respect you anymore because of me. They never respected me, I said. I'm a broke homesteader with a drinking problem. They only tolerated me because I kept my head down. To hell with them. You deserve better than damaged goods. That snapped something in me. I grabbed her shoulders, not rough, but firm enough that she had to look at me. Listen, I said. We're both damaged. You think I don't know that? You think I don't wake up seeing the faces of men I killed? You think I don't hate myself every time I reach for a bottle? We're both broken. That's why it works. I let go and stepped back. I needed to say something I'd never said out loud before. I'm no good with words, but hear this once. You stayed when you could have run. You worked when you could have quit. You share my bed and don't flinch from my demons. That's more than I ever thought I'd have. So if you're staying, stay. If you're leaving, go. But don't decide based on what the Rock Springs folk whisper. Decide on whether you can stand waking up next to me for the next 40 years. She broke then, real sobs, the kind that tear loose from somewhere deep. I held her while it poured out. "I'm staying," she said at last. "I'm staying." And she did. Fall came, and with it word from down the line. Orson Pike's ranch was failing. The engagement had collapsed. Rosalie Kemp had run back east with a piano teacher. By November, Pike had sold off most of his land and left the territory. He stopped by my place once before he went. I met him on the porch, rifle resting across my arms. He wasn't looking for trouble, just sat his horse there looking older than I remembered. "You were right to keep her," he said. "I was a fool." "Yeah," I said. "What did she have that made you give up everything I thought about Mabel inside fixing supper? Her hands rough from work, her hair slipping loose from its pins. Thought about her laughter, now easy unguarded. About waking up beside her and not feeling so alone. She didn't make me give up anything I said. She made me want to keep it all." Pike nodded once, then turned his horse and rode away. I never saw him again. That winter, the winter of 1890, when Wyoming finally became a state, Mabel didn't say a word. She just started getting sick every morning. I knew what it meant. So did she. We didn't talk much about it. We just started adding on to the cabin neighbors pitching in where they could, boards going up against the cold. It was a strange thing once Mabel Fitch's belly began to show. Some of the town women eased up on her. Time doesn't heal much, but it does sand the sharp edges down. Come spring, the papers arrived, making my 160 officially mine. 6 years of homesteading finished. That land was mine by law and by blood-earned right. And Mabel had earned her place too. Folks ask me now and then if I regret opening that door, losing my savings, taking on a woman with a past, binding myself to the wreckage of another man's choices. I tell them this: I've killed men. I've lived through blizzards that tried to peel the skin off my bones. I've lost cattle crops and damn near my sanity. But the only thing I ever truly saved was her, and by saving her, I ended up saving myself. The West doesn't care about what you were yesterday. It only asks whether you'll open the door when the wind's trying to kill whatever's standing on the other side, whether you're foolish enough or brave enough to turn the latch when someone knocks. I opened mine, and I would do it again. Because some things that look broken aren't finished yet. And sometimes in choosing them, you find out you aren't either. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. We appreciate you more than you think. If this tale stirred something deep inside, we invite you to remain part of this frontier of memories. More true stories of honor, compassion, and destiny are waiting for you here. Subscribe, share, comment, and thank you for riding with us today. Aviso Legal Bara Disclaimer. Our content is designed for artistic and entertainment purposes and may reinterpret historical themes using fictional touches. We apply AI tools thoughtfully only to support production while keeping human supervision over editing, emotional tone, and narrative coherence. We always comply with regulatory guidelines for AI-based media and avoid deepfake practices or identity manipulation. All supporting components remain legally sourced. Please ask for authorization before sharing or adapting any segment. Your respect makes it possible for us to continue telling meaningful stories.